Imagine being arrested for flying a kite. Sounds ridiculous, right? But under British colonial law in India, this was a reality. For many Indians, flying kites was more than just a part of their culture. It was a form of protest. They would write anti-British slogans on the kites, or fly them during public gatherings to show resistance. However, the British saw that as a threat. And so they banned it, framing it as a public nuisance when really it was about control. However, the ban wasn't just about flying kites. It was about shaping a legal system designed not to empower or protect its people, but rather to suppress them. Now I know what you're all thinking. Oh, that was a long time ago. What does that have to do with me? Well, the answer is everything. Many of those colonial laws and the systems they inspired are still in place today. They've outlived the empires that created them and continue to shape our societies in ways that we don't even realize. But why? Why were these laws created? To understand that, let's take a step into the shoes of a colonial government. Imagine, you're ruling over millions of people, but you only have a few thousand soldiers and administrators. You just don't have the numbers to control them by force alone. So, what are you gonna do? You do something smarter. You create laws, not just to punish, but to shape obedience. You train local elites to enforce them. You teach people to fear breaking them. And over time, you don't need soldiers on every street because you've built something greater than fear. Now, an example of a law that you could have implemented are sedition laws. These are laws that criminalize speech deemed disloyal to the government. The British used them to silence Indian freedom fighters. Even Mahatma Gandhi was arrested simply for calling the British rule curse. But here's where it gets unsettling. This law still exists today. Governments around the world use it to arrest activists, journalists, or anyone who dares criticize their authority. Imagine one day you tweet about an injustice you saw, and the next, you're arrested. That's not history. That's our reality. And this pattern repeats itself all over the world. Wherever colonial powers ruled, they left behind systems that benefited the elite while displacing the rest. As I realized how these inherited systems still impact our access to justice today, I began to ask deeper questions. Not just what laws were created, but whose values were they founded upon? So to answer that, let's zoom out for a moment and talk about legal theory, because philosophy has a lot to say about how we got here. Legal positivism. It's the idea that the law is valid simply because someone in power said so. Not because it's fair, not because it's right, just because. This way of thinking was the backdrop of colonial systems for decades. However, it ignored one very crucial thing: justice. It treated the law as a set of rules to be followed, not as values to live your life by. Enter Professor H.L.A. Hart, a legal professor and one of the most influential figures in legal theory. He was the first to say, whoa, wait a minute. This can't be it. There's got to be more to the law. I think that it's about keeping society ordered. But then came Professor Ronald Dworkin, who pushed back. He said, that the law isn't just about rules and regulations, but that it's about principles. Principles grounded in fairness, integrity, and justice. He argued that we don't just have a right to question such laws, but that we have a duty to. He challenged us to see that when a law is deeply unjust, when it silences voices, when it protects inequality, when it harms people, it loses its moral authority. And it is exactly this philosophical shift from blind acceptance to critical engagement that is so important. Because the truth is, the law doesn't always serve justice. Sometimes it serves power. And once we begin to understand that, we stop seeing the law as something that's fixed. Instead, we see it as something that we can, or rather, should I say, something that we should question. After learning about legal theory, I was inspired to find a solution. So I reached out to Professor Christoph Eberhard, a legal anthropologist and a guest lecturer at Paris City University. We talked about something that I had never really thought of before: the tension between universal laws and local customs. Intrigued, I read his paper about women's rights in India, where he made a very interesting and very powerful point. He said that when rigid legal systems are imposed on fluid, community-based cultures, it doesn't lead to reform. More often, it leads to resistance. Great, so he identified the problem. What was his solution? Legal pluralism. The idea that it's not innovation versus tradition, but innovation and tradition in the same conversation. This idea changed how I saw justice. It showed me that laws can't just be theoretically fair, like what colonial powers did, but instead, they have to be culturally relevant. Now, my speech isn't just a history lesson. It's an invitation. An invitation to learn more about the systems that shape our world. Because once we learn the histories behind these systems, we are able to make better and more informed decisions. So please, read, watch, reflect, and engage in conversations with others. Ask thoughtful questions about why a law was created, or whose idea it was, or how it's evolved over time. Finally, I'd like to leave you with this. Every unjust law that we question is a kite of our own that we fly, defying the winds that try to ground us. Thank you.